I think to anyone who knows anything about RPG Maker, Off is a game that will immediately come to mind. Full disclosure, I know almost nothing about the field that is RPG Maker games. This is really the only one that I've fully sunk my teeth into. Though even if I don't have a lot of context for RPG Maker games, I don't really need that to know that Off was a massive splash in this field. The game undoubtedly pushes a lot of boundaries, and it pushed a lot of boundaries for indie games in general. I know everyone probably knows this shit already, but Toby Fox, a creator of Earthbound, has gone on record saying that Off was a massive inspiration for that game, and as someone who's played both, it's really damn obvious. Elements like the overall themes, the characters, and even the writing at points reek of Undertale. Hell, even stuff like the whole breaking the fourth wall thing. Off got to that first. Again, at least in the indie space. Though, despite all this motion, I had no idea what the hell Off was until randomly one day the game entered my life through some of my friends talking about the remaster before that came out. And as I'd like to think anyone who doesn't know what an Off is would react to that information would say, what the fuck is Off? I did some research and planned on picking up the remaster when it came out, but randomly I stumbled upon the fact that someone unofficially ported the game to 3DS via homebrew? Which, okay, I can't say that I was expecting to see that. On a whim, I downloaded that port of the game and played it that way, and, you know, while that might not be how it was intended to be played, man, I still thought the game was so interesting regardless. Seriously, I don't know what I could have possibly expected whenever I first booted this shit up, and I'll be honest, I don't think I fully got the game until the last, 15 minutes of that first playthrough, if that. But man, I've been thinking about this stuff going on within the story ever since beating it, and since beating the game too. And I really just want the chance to talk about this game because there's so much here in this little package that I want to try to unpack. So I'm just gonna come out and say right now that there isn't a real point to this video or anything. For the most part, it's probably just gonna be me, rambling on about this game and trying to make sense of it all. And as if it goes without saying, there are gonna be heavy spoilers for Off in this video. I'm gonna keep all of, the super heavy spoilers, to its own section, so, you can still watch this video if you haven't played the game, but this video is primarily made for people who have played the game, so, I'm not really, if you don't want to get spoiled at all, just leave the video now, because this really isn't the video for you. One last thing. For the sake of this video, I'm playing the remaster on the Switch. But just know that this is not a review of the remaster on the Switch. I'm simply just playing the game as it was, and I'm simply playing the remaster because I wanted to play the remaster and, see all that. If I bring up anything in regards to the remaster, I will state it specifically, but we're just talking about Off. So, with that said, I think it's about time to talk about my experience beating Off.
Was it hard?
It's kind of hard, a little bit. I can show you even. The game starts off by letting you name yourself, and immediately, the game makes the distinction between you, the player, and the character that you're controlling, being the batter. While this is by no means the first, or hell, the only video game to do this, this design is all over Undertale, for example, though I find the way it's implemented in this game to be incredibly interesting, for reasons that I'm not gonna talk about just yet. For now, all you're told is that this is the batter, this is who you're playing as, and he's on a mission to purify the world. With that, you're taken to Zone 0 where you meet the judge, who offers up a position as your guide to this world. After making it through Zone 0, you're then railroaded to Zone 1, and eventually you make your way through Zone 2 and Zone 3. Though before we get deep into the elements of the zones here, or really anything else about the game, I think I'd be doing this game such a disservice by not immediately bringing up its super strong art direction. While the overworld, for example, is made to look very, very simple, I think it still manages to give a super distinct identity to the game in spite of this. All the characters in this game are black and white, and when laid upon these environments that are pretty much entirely made of one solid color each, it kinda makes it feel like you're out of place here. Everything's a bit out of place here, actually. Almost like the world itself doesn't have a lot of coherence to it. And this is all the more apparent when you look into the actual character designs themselves. I don't even know how to describe the art style at play here, but I at the very least know that I fucking adore it. The character designs here are so unnerving and strange, once again primarily being made up of whites and blacks, but always having this sort of dreadful look to them. It very much gives off macabre energy. It feels unsettling, but I can't help but feel sucked in by looking at it. I'm sorry if I'm not doing the best job at describing the character designs here, but calling them anything less than amazing is simply just wrong. With monsters like these throughout the world, it makes the Batter's mission all the more believable. I just mentioned the coherence of this world, and I think that this is a super intentional element to the game. But it's not just with the way that the characters look on this backdrop. If you're anything like me, the more you pay attention to this world and how the things work around here, the less sense things make. The world is split into 3 zones, like I mentioned earlier, and each one covers different parts of it. Zone 1 being the more agricultural side of the world that gives you insight into the processes put in place to keep it sustainable. Zone 2 being a residential area with some areas of recreation, like an amusement park and a library. Finally, Zone 3 is a factory that I can only assume hasn't unionized quite yet, given how the workers are treated here. All 3 of these areas make sense on a surface level, you know? They seem like the basic necessary aspects to have a sustainable world. Though, you notice things like how the water is not water, it's plastic. How all the citizens in each zone seem kind of out of it. Sometimes even erupting into acts of violence, but not seemingly of their own accord. As you play, it becomes clearer and clearer that things are off around here. I find Zone 1 to be an incredibly strong opening to show you how fucked up everything is. Like I said, the oceans are made of plastic, which, you know, I guess isn't that far off from our world, but seemingly to gain access to every other element in this world, such as smoke, metal, and meat, the very essence of the world and the things that keep it together, they come from either the smoke mines or these cows that are mutilated for their metal and their meat. Zone 3 specifically shows off how irrational and immature the citizens of this world can be, too. Pretty much everyone in this factory is helplessly addicted to sugar, which is an element that can only be produced in this factory. Acting like children over, well, sugar. Hell, this immaturity can even be seen in Zone 2. When the Batter has to purify a bunch of specters in the residential area, well, first of all, he's not even allowed in there unless he's wearing a necktie, but even after he saves them, their ungrateful asses kick him out of town just simply because they see him as an outsider and not the person who, you know, literally fucking saved them. Alright then, fuck you guys, I don't even feel bad for what I'm about to do. Though these guys aren't the only characters that you'll meet throughout the game, you obviously have the Zone Guardians as well. Dayton, Zone 1's guardian, who functions as an inspector and is kind of a huge asshole. Japhet, guardian of Zone 2, who's a bird racked with guilt over their own sins, but still proud of what they've been able to give to the people of their zone, despite what the people of that zone have to say about it. And Enoch, Zone 3's guardian, who's presumably also the owner of the factory, and likely takes enjoyment out of enforcing working conditions stricter than Mappa when it's time to animate Denji getting groomed in Chainsaw Man. Please let me see my family. Now, I think we can ignore the fact that I probably just horribly mispronounced all 3 of their names. And while all of these guys definitely have things going for them, Dayton is kind of an endearing asshole when he's not saying slurs, and Enoch has a very memorable escape sequence and fight because of the scale present during it. My favorite of the 3 easily has gotta be Japhet, who I think is a really tragic character in a way. I'm gonna talk about his character real fast, so if you don't want to hear that, skip to this timecode on the screen. Alright, like I mentioned, he created Zone 2, and is racked with guilt over his own sins and failures. I mentioned that he's a bird, but when you first meet him, you'd think that I'm a dirty fucking liar, because that's not a bird. You see, this is actually the judge's brother, Valerie. Or rather, it was. You see that Japhet is directly responsible for the death of Valerie. Valerie, for some reason, decided to eat Japhet whenever he was small enough to be eaten. Though, unfortunately for him, Valerie was too kind-hearted to swallow Japhet, and Japhet was too powerful to take that shit, so eventually, he took over Valerie's body as a vessel. Though, once Japhet took over Valerie, nobody in Zone 2 recognized him as a leader anymore, and therefore didn't feel it necessary to show him any more respect, which deeply frustrates him and further feeds into the fact that he thinks he's a failure. combined with the fact that he's constantly reminded of the fact that he killed Valerie, the one who was too kind to kill him by literally inhabiting his body, I believe that causes him more guilt and makes the sins all too clear in his mind. So when the batter confronts Japhet to purify Zone 2, Japhet laments at his regrets and his failures and seemingly accepts that this is his destiny. Though, he doesn't go down without a fight, obviously, but he accepts that this is just how things have to be. I glossed over a lot of this whenever I first played the game, so on this replay, whenever I realized how much depth there was under the surface with this character, it genuinely kinda hit me. He's not in the game for very long, but I think Japhet's story is incredibly tragic, and same with Valerie too. This development very clearly fucks with the judge too, who after this point effectively leaves the narrative. Though, with the judge gone, who takes his place as the tutorial guy? Well, no one other than Zachary, of course.
Meow.
This guy's a shopkeeper throughout the game, and genuinely is just the fucking coolest guy, like, ever. He laughs pretty much every time you talk to him, and he even snarkily breaks the fourth wall a few times to talk to you, the player. While before Zone 3, he does just solely function as the game's shopkeeper, he tells you that due to unforeseen circumstances, likely because he's upset that you killed his brother, he's taking the place of the judge going forward, and even fashions himself a mask to make him look like the judge. While he absolutely has the least going on out of everyone I've mentioned thus far, I mean, come on, it's fucking Zachary, dude. He's so cool. Even the batter I find super interesting. Though, the reasons why I find him interesting are tied to why I find this game as a whole interesting. And I've really just spoken about the narrative in this game thus far, or really the characters found in the game's narrative, though obviously games by nature of them being games have gameplay in them as well. A fact that you're probably cognizant of because you clicked on this fucking video. Anyways, unfortunately, I think this is probably where Off's biggest faults lie. The gameplay in this game is kind of boring, though when I say this, I'm specifically referring to the battle system here. The overall gameplay present is overall, it's pretty simple, but I think it's effective. There's a lot of puzzle solving present, and even if it can just feel like a walking sim at times, I don't much care because I think it does a pretty good job at engrossing you within the world. The actual battle system though? I'm sorry, but I find this to be pretty damn unchallenging overall. The original foundation of the battle system is something a bit similar to the active time battle system found in Final Fantasy VII. Now, please excuse the uncultured shit that I'm about to spew. I haven't played Final Fantasy VII. Okay, I know, alright, okay, I get it. The fact that I've played the bouncer before I've even touched a single Final Fantasy game, I get it. That's probably got me on a list somewhere, okay? I'll play it someday. I swear, just give me time. I want to play Racing Lagoon first. I think I'd have to play more games with similar battle systems to get an idea of how differently it could be handled there, as I feel judging the style of RPG combat solely based off of Off kinda isn't really fair, but I'll be honest guys, this ain't it. Like, it's just okay, I think. The battle system basically sees each character being on a timer, and once that timer is up, the character gets a chance to attack. Though, it's not super deep, unfortunately. Most battles in this game pretty much just consisted of me mashing my strongest attacks and coming out unscathed. I think the most amount of strategy I ever employed was choosing exactly at which moment to use my healing items. It's pretty monotonous, all things considered. I think it is fair to mention, though, that the battle system did see a bit of rebalancing in the remaster. Though, personally, while I appreciate the effort, the battles in this version still feel really boring overall. The most clear changes here are the fact that they added a critical hit system to the game. At random intervals, any unit on the field's timer will go orange and it'll fill up significantly faster, and the next action that unit takes will have a heightened effect. While the critical hits do feel super satisfying to pull off, again, they don't add a lot outside of another thing to watch out for in battle. I think the gameplay in the remaster is slightly more engaging than the original because I do feel like you have to be a little more switched on here at risk of not winning, but ultimately, the battles aren't all that interesting, and I would say that this is not the reason that you are playing this game for. Though, and this might just be me coping, but I think the battle system, like with most other things in this game, is very much an intentional design choice. I personally believe that the battle system being the way it is a reflection of how the batter views his mission, and how these battles are just obstacles in the way of achieving that goal. Now, I get that's the motivation in pretty much every RPG ever known to man, though here, I'm mostly speaking because of the monotony of the battles themselves. With this mindset, the battles here almost read as if the batter views them simply more as inconveniences than actual challenges. You can even see this in the way that the batter talks. He never really feels like he's being challenged by anything that's going on. He's got two different attitudes when referring to enemies. Whenever they're lower level grunts, he's just saying stuff like, "Let's kill all the specters," without a single hint of hesitation or fear. But whenever he's talking to the Guardians, he's talking so much shit to the point that you think he's practicing some of this in the mirror. He's wholly overconfident in his own abilities, and mirroring my experience with the battle system, at least, yeah, no, he's fully right to be that way. This shit is so easy. It's this ludonarrative quirk that keeps me from truly disliking the implementation of the battle system. And while I realize that this kind of comes off as a crackpot theory and not at all what Mordiscoast, creator of Undertale, intended, ultimately, I don't think it matters if that's what he intended or not. Ludonarrative elements in games typically tend to be what stick out the most to me, and a lot of the games that I love are full of them. And because of this, I always try and figure out why a game is designed the way that it is. Games like The World Ends With You, Persona 3, Tulip, Pikmin, and many others I love have elements like these. Even if the battle system being the way it is isn't intentional, who fucking cares? I was still able to find meaning out of it anyways, right? So what if this wasn't the intended purpose? I think if it was able to be of some importance to me, then I think it serves its purpose as a ludonarrative element, regardless of whether or not this is actually intentional. And I really do like the way that it characterizes the batter, and because I think that it fits with his general attitude towards everything, I very much think that it is intentional. I think this ludonarrative design is further complemented by the game's main battle theme, Pepper Steak, which not only is fucking flames, but I always thought that it was an odd-sounding main battle theme. When I think of a regular old battle theme in a video game, I typically think of something that's upbeat, something used to pump you up, or something that sounds directly heroic. Pepper Steak, however, doesn't really sound like any of these things. It sounds kind of fucked up in a way, which I perceive as reflecting the batter's mindset towards his mission. I think it reinforces the fact that he's just doing this to get this shit done and nothing more. I can kind of imagine this song being super fitting for any monotonous task, and it seems like the game is very much of the opinion that beating off is kind of monotonous. So with that, I think Pepper Steak is a very, very, very fitting battle theme. No, I think just giving a highlight to Pepper Steak is a little bit disingenuous, because the entire fucking OST is good. Though nowadays, whenever you choose to beat off, the OST you get is going to be a bit different depending on which version that you play. So we're going to talk about that now. Depending on whether or not you play the original version of Off or the remaster, you're gonna be hearing a different soundtrack. The original version soundtrack was put together by one Elias Conrad Coldwood, and calling that soundtrack badass is an understatement equal to implying that an art degree is useful. I find that original OST to be super, super unnerving, fitting into the overall vibe that the game is going for, and making you feel like everything is just off enough to instill you with a little bit of unease. I really like songs like Unreasonable Behavior, the song that plays when you're purging the specters in Zone 2's residential area. It sounds super melancholic while having a really funky beat in the background that's super infectious, yet still managing to feel like it fits in super well with what's going on right now. Though, and I should stress this right now, my appreciation for the original soundtrack is by no means me saying that this new soundtrack is bad. This isn't a Persona 1 situation. The music in the Off remaster actually sounds fucking good. However, even if I do think it sounds good, overall, I feel like the songs here don't carry the same weight that the originals do in most cases. I mean, just listen to the new main battle themes for one. While none of these are bad, and hell, I even like the idea of having different battle themes play in the different zones, they've got nothing on the energy and the vibe that Pepper Steak brought to the table, unfortunately. Even the song that replaces Unreasonable Behavior, Paranoia Shelter, it just doesn't quite hit the same as the original track did. That's not to say that every track here doesn't eclipse the original. I actually like the new song used for Japheth's fight a lot. I like it a little bit more than the old one, actually, as I think it better encapsulates the feelings of regret that Japhet feels for his failures. Here's a comparison of the two. And if you've played the remaster, you know what I'm about to say, but as if it goes without saying, the replacement for the song used in the final fight, fucking amazing. I actually think I like it quite a bit more than the original, if I'm being honest. Ultimately, while I do think that the new soundtrack is serviceable, hell, actually, it's more than serviceable, it's pretty damn good. I think that the original soundtrack does encapsulate the feelings that the game is going for a bit more consistently than this new one. I am aware that this new release is definitely going to be a few people's very first experience with the game, and I'm curious to see what those people's thoughts about the music here will be. Though, as for me, I prefer the originals. I don't really envy the positions of the new composers at all, because ACC did specifically say that he didn't want to come back for this remaster, because he used a lot of sampling in the original game's OST. So it was a case of, like, the game is being sold on, like, actual storefronts, and you can, like, use money to buy it now. That, like, could bring legal issues. He didn't really want to deal with that. Totally understandable. But I don't, like, again, I don't envy the position of the new composers who have to come in and do the music for this remaster. Toby Fox, actually, who composed for the remaster, even said that, specifically, he felt that it was a bit weird coming in to do the remaster because he felt that the songs were irreplaceable, and I think at some point he even said that it was like going into like a house and like just like fucking defacing all the family pictures and stuff like that. So like definitely coming from his mindset, I don't imagine that he or any of the other composers really enjoyed the fact that they went in to do this stuff, but for what it is, the music is quite good. Personally, I think the original music is better, but I'm like, both OSTs are fine. It's not like I'm not gonna like start killing people over which one is better, right? It's like, they're both good. You know, ultimately, music is a pretty subjective form of art, so it doesn't really matter like what my critiques of it are. You know, one person might like the original OST, one person might like the new OST. It doesn't really matter that much. With that said, though, I think that's pretty much everything that I can say about the game before getting into the spoiler territory, so if you haven't played this game yet, again, leave now, because we're going to be talking about spoilers for the rest of the video. We good? Alright. Once you purify all 3 zones, you unlock one final area, being the room. Now, this area is incredibly abstract, and I'll stress that, like with a good chunk of the game's symbolism and design, I'm not sure I fully understand it. but I think I get the basic idea of what it represents, and I think it'll become clearer the more I describe it. In this area, for example, we meet all 3 of the Zone Guardians again, presumably before the events of the game, though all 3 of them are acting very different compared to how they were characterized up until this point. Dayton doesn't even say a single vulgar utterance to you, and given what we know about him, you know he would if he had it in him. They all also talk to the batter in a super friendly manner, almost like they're speaking to him as if he's not the guy who brutally murdered all of them in cold blood and also tore down their empires just to rub salt into the wound. The batter's a bad guy? I think this thought becomes clear once you come across this comic book here, which lets you play out a scenario where the hero is depicted as a boxer and the villain is a baseball player? Pretty on the nose at this point. I don't think there's any sense in beating around what happens next, because we're on track to beat off soon. You eventually find yourself face to face with the Queen, the appointed ruler of this world. Though, before the fight, she mentions many curious things. I will not let you lay a hand on the son that brought us into this world. There are many abstract mentions of parenthood in the exchange between the two. The batter's saying things like, "This cradle is the home of my father," and "Lost in preparations for the birthday party, you forgot who it was for." Ignoring the fact that this is genuinely the coldest fucking line I've heard in my entire life, it paints an incredibly interesting picture for the relationship between the two. The Queen mentions how she created this entire world for him, presumably this son that she mentions earlier. The batter clearly having an opinion on this son, and that opinion is, well, it's not exactly the most morally upstanding one, that's for sure. During the fight with the Queen, which, by the way, has an absolutely killer atmosphere, ignoring the fact that it's, again, really, really fucking easy, she speaks every single time she attacks. Though I can't exactly tell who these messages are for specifically. Some of them feel like they're berating the child, or like her saying, "No dessert for you," possibly reflecting the civilians' desire for sugar in Zone 3? Though also saying things like, "You've been wrong since the beginning." That feels like it's directly targeted at the batter. Regardless of who specifically she's talking to, there's always a chance that she is talking to multiple people. You eventually win. Finally, you strike the last blow, but not before one final exchange. Look, he has your eyes. But they're full of fear. And we meet the person whose eyes are being referred to soon enough. The batter returns to the room and walks up to this child here, Hugo. Hugo is seen after every guardian is killed, and it's pretty damn clear that this is the child that the Queen was referring to. And well, since the batter's gone this far, there's absolutely no question that he's gonna kill Hugo too. So he does, and eventually he makes it to this room with a switch. Though, before he gets the chance to throw it, he's stopped by the judge. He walks up to the batter and berates him for everything that he's done, which I guess now's as good a time as any to unpack everything that happened here. Obviously, as if it goes without saying, the batter's definition of purification is incredibly destructive. You actually have the option to return to each zone after you purify it, and when you do, if you do, everything is eerie, it's uncomfortable. You're constantly forced to listen to these voices whispering to one another, and no telling who they belong to. Whenever I first saw that the batter's mission here was to purify the world, I just assumed that it was to fix or save the world by purging the impurities. And, well, that technically is what the batter was doing the entire time, just his definition of an impurity is very different from my definition of an impurity. But I mean, you saw what the world was made of, though. The oceans were made of plastic. The citizens here always seem super out of it, unsure of themselves, irrational. And judging by the sounds that they make when they speak, it sounds like doing so takes a lot out of them. The people in charge here are clearly not good people. Enoch, for example, works his employees to death and doesn't care about those losses. Japhet lives with the guilt of his failures and the people in his zone and is reminded of those sins constantly due to the physical form that he takes. And Dayton is a politically incorrect jerk who pushes people around with no regard to their feelings. This also isn't even mentioning the fact that the world is full of ghosts and specters. It's no wonder the batter would want to purify it all. It's pretty fucking impure. Though he also takes issue with the upkeep on the Queen's behalf as well. Though it isn't her who created this world, rather, it was Hugo. At least, these are the vibes that I've interpreted. I feel like it's safe to say that Hugo has an obvious connection to each of the Guardians, as he reacts pretty unfavorably after the batter defeats them. Perhaps the moment when you meet the Guardians in the room is a retelling of Hugo meeting and becoming friends with the trio, and designating them to all be Guardians of each zone in this new world. The Queen also hints to this with her line mentioning the sun that brought us into the world. Her choice of the word us could very well just be referring to her and the batter. It absolutely does include the two of them no matter how you slice it, but I personally interpret that as her saying that Hugo brought everyone into this world. Everyone we've met is Hugo's creation, and like the Queen mentions, that includes her and the batter too. And while I think it's very clear that the Queen functions as a surrogate for Hugo's mother, I think it's fair to say that the batter is the surrogate for Hugo's father as well. In the original translation for the game, the judge berates you for killing wife and child, which implies that the Queen is, by technicality, the batter's wife. While this line was changed in the remaster to simply just woman and child, I still choose to believe that the batter is related to the two of them, especially when you take into account that the Queen says that the batter has his eyes, obviously referring to Hugo. Though the batter clearly resents Hugo, and Hugo definitely feels the same way. If you pay attention to the dialogue in the room, Hugo seemingly has a strained relationship with his father. There's a piece of paper on the wall in Hugo's room that mentions that he's taking pills now per his dad's choice, claiming to not like them. Maybe that's a bit of a reach, but he also mentions that the comic that he received was a gift from his father, and with the baseball player being pictured as the villain here, I'm pretty sure that this is where the batter's identity comes from. Which, I always thought that the baseball motif here was kind of strange, and to be fair, it still is, but no, there's actually a reason for it. The motif of the character is directly tied to Hugo's experiences, which makes me think that the batter is Hugo's father. Or maybe Hugo has an actual mother and a father, and the Queen and the batter are just two separate entities that are created through Hugo's flawed imagination along with the rest of the world, and therefore are surrogates for his parents, like I mentioned earlier. Though, that definitely does make the batter tearing down this world a lot more fucked up. Almost like it's a father disapproving of their son's creation and wanting to silence them. Literally. Though, I think claiming that the batter is the one tearing down everything here is a bit disingenuous, as well. If you remember, the game made a pretty clear distinction between you, the player, and the batter. And once everyone else is dead, the judge calls you out on this. Someone who was once sympathetic to your mission has now seen the awful and the tragic effects that have spawned from it. Also not helping that he had a direct connection to it too. He's lost it all. The world he inhabited is gone. Maybe it was imperfect, but it was still his world. His brother was born there. His brother died there. Zachary was there, and he was great. There were so many innocent citizens who, well, yes, were a bit strange. That was, again, their world, and now it's gone. And while the batter was the one holding the gun, you're the one who pulled the trigger. And so, you just have to sit there. Are we right? Are we wrong? It's impossible to clearly lay down, because, the actions taken throughout the entire game are really, really morally ambiguous, to the point where it's like, you can't even really tell if you're right or wrong for the choices that you make. Is it really the best way? Like, is this really what the world deserved? It's really, really complicated, so I'll let you be the judge. The judge, seeing the situation as it is, gives you one last choice to make, letting you side with either him or the batter. Siding with the judge sees you take control of him in one last fight against the batter. Though, once you lose control of him, you see this. Was this what we always looked like to everyone else? Is this just because the batter is throwing out one last gambit to make sure that his mission is a success? Ultimately, though, it doesn't matter, because once the batter goes down, it's over. You and the judge win, but ultimately, it's a hollow victory. The world is still destroyed, and there's nothing left for either of you here. You reflect on your sins as you watch the judge walk through this new world, alone, empty. You did this to him. You did this to everyone else, and now someone has to live with the sins that you're responsible for. While you probably get to move on to the next game or whatever new experience that your life will bring you, the judge is forever stuck in a world where he isn't given the same pleasure. His life has nothing in store for him anymore. And it's all because of you. Not the happiest ending, to say the least. Though, unfortunately, if you can believe it, this is what Mortis Ghost considers to be the non-canon ending. The official ending, where you side with the batter, sees you fight against the judge. Though this fight is incredibly easy, and once you beat him, or alternatively, if you lose while controlling the judge, the batter relishes in this final kill, and then turns to face the switch. The switch is now on, and with one final press of the button, he throws the switch, definitively turning the world off. And with that, there's nothing. There's nothing left in this world but a black screen as far as can be seen. Though, once I threw that switch, I saw something in that darkness. I saw myself. And naturally, with nowhere else to look, I just looked at that person staring right back at me, realizing that this is the person who made that decision to turn the entire world off. Well, I mean, I wasn't aware of what I was doing. I only guided the batter on his mission. That's all I was told to do. I was told that the batter had a mission to fulfill. I fulfilled that mission. Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, this wasn't my fault. I didn't mean this. I didn't mean to do this to the world. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's not. No, this is my fault. This isn't what I wanted, but I did it anyway. And with those thoughts in my head as I looked at the person in the screen's reflection some more, the credits rolled. And man, I may be dramatizing it a bit, but genuinely, the concepts present in that ending have lived rent-free in my head ever since. And that story of me looking into the reflection, seeing myself, entirely true. Maybe I embellished it a bit for the sake of this video, but I genuinely did feel that. The game's themes are so complex, and I can't get enough of it. Ultimately, I do very much believe that the batter's choices here are wrong. I don't think it's fair for anyone to just decide who gets to live and who gets to die. Having to control this being that thinks in that way goes against all of my morals, and yet the way the game tackles morality as a concept keeps me thinking about it months after finishing. I mean, whenever I first found out that the game existed, I only wanted to play it because it looked like a super stylistically interesting RPG Maker game. But man, I had no idea that the game would fuck with me in the way that it did. The game is around like 5 fucking hours, and yet it offers up themes more complex than some games pushing way the fuck over that could even think to offer. Though, what makes it all the more impressive to me is the fact that, well, it started off as a free RPG Maker game that was always meant to be a small side project for Mortis Ghost. By no means was it ever intended to gain the cult status that it has now. Like, I don't think he pictured it being in the state it's in now, popular enough to warrant a remaster that doubles as a port of it to actual storefronts that you can use money on. Yet, it got all of that. Like I mentioned before, it's been credited as a direct inspiration for other indie games to release later, like Undertale and One Shot, for example. And I think credit like that is enough to make the claim that it's had a pretty fucking strong influence. Hell, even if Undertale and One Shot didn't exist, well, I probably wouldn't know that this game existed, I'll just be honest with you, but it had a strong influence on me regardless, and pretty much everyone else that I know who has played it. As fucked up as it may sound, given how the game made me feel after I finished, and how it makes me feel now, even after going over all the fucked up shit in its narrative, it's something I can't get enough of. which I guess is proof enough by me playing this remaster. You know, before this remaster came out, I saw a video where Mortis Ghost mentioned how this game was made nothing more as a funny thing to show his friends, which, Jesus Christ, if that's true, you are an insane man, Mr. Ghost. Like, I say that with admiration for your work, but I can't get over the fact that this fucking shit came from that idea. But more importantly, in that video, he talks about how the game is cursed, and he implores you to not play the game. Though, as you can tell by the very existence of this video, I ignored that warning. But by me playing that remaster, I guess I technically ignored that warning twice. And while on that first playthrough, I think you can make the argument that I didn't know what I was getting myself into, and that I was innocent, or as innocent as one could be in a situation that Off would put you in. This time around, though, in order to make this video, I chose to do all of that again, and not only did I choose to do it all again, but I chose to pay for the privilege this time. I might be a bad person.